Okay, good afternoon, everyone. We're just going to give it another couple of minutes just to let some people come in and join us for today's webinar, which is on greening our local economy. So if we're happy to just hang on for about 25 seconds, we can chat about the weather outside. It's looking very autumnal. It's very sunny, cloudy, and Leicester. I can see some blue sky up there. We've got another few people coming in. And we can now go. So thank you all very much for joining us. We've got myself, Ian Mackenzie from Mattioli Woods. Here I'm the Chief Operating Officer, and I oversee all areas within the business from an operational perspective. I'm also one of the directors on the LBV, so Leicester Business Voice. On the call with us today, the other people that are going to be presenting, we've got Mary Louise Harrison, who is a Senior Project Manager at LEP. We've got Gavin Fletcher, who is from Midlands Energy Hub. We've got Sam Lux from the Department for Business and Energy and Industrial Strategy. We've got Fiona, who's the Climate Change Manager at Leicester City Council. We've got Richard Garner, who's Head of Partnership at Zeller. And we've also got Neil McGee, who is also one of the directors of LBV and very experienced. He's here to basically make sure I don't mess up in a nutshell. So I'd like to thank all the panelists for coming in, and I'm going to hand over to Mary Louise, who's going to go through her project accordingly. Thank you all.
Thank you, Ian. Good morning, everybody. As Senior Projects Manager at the Leicester and Leicestershire Enterprise Partnership, or LEP for short, with overall responsibility for the carbon agenda, I've been asked here today to come and tell you a little bit about the Intergovernmental Climate Change Conference, which is about to kick off in Glasgow in 2 days' time, or to give it its official name, Conference of the Parties, or COP for short. But why COP26? This is simply because it will be the 26th time in which it will have met. So, Simon, please. What exactly is it, and why is it given so much importance? It is the United Nations Climate Summit where world leaders come together to discuss and coordinate action to stop the rise in global temperatures and reverse climate change. Over the 2 weeks, 30,000 people are expected to go through the doors of the conference centre. It will bring together over 200 heads of state, climate experts and campaigners to discuss climate change and what needs to be done to try and halt global warming and over time reverse it. Next slide, please. Simon, next. Thank you. Global temperatures are rising and it affects us all. The amount of CO2 in the Earth's atmosphere is rising and is far higher now than at any point than in the last 400,000 years. And it's still rising. The discussions between world leaders isn't about whether or not climate change and global warming needs to be addressed, but by how much and by when before it becomes irreversible. Next slide, please. Presidents and prime ministers will report on how their countries have progressed against the targets they set themselves at COP21, known as the Paris Agreement, and more importantly, agree new ones. It is being held, of course, against the backdrop of the COVID-19 pandemic, which brought economies around the world to a standstill. But instead of diverting attention away from the devastation of climate change and sustainability, the pandemic has actually done something surprising. Individuals and communities and businesses like yourselves are beginning to become better engaged and understand the issues for yourselves and are no longer waiting for governments to act first. Next slide, please. For example, in a deliberate move intended to influence world leaders, cement makers around the world have pledged to cut their emissions by up to 25% this decade, reaching net zero by 2050. Why will this make a difference to COP26? Because the cement industry is responsible for nearly 8% of all global carbon dioxide emissions. No individual country produces this amount of CO2, other than the United States and China. This pledge, if realised, will stop 5 billion tonnes of CO2 being released into the atmosphere. They intend to achieve this by changing the chemical processes and materials they use, as well as becoming more energy efficient. The significance of this declaration is that it makes the first time that major producers around the globe have made a public commitment to reduce their impact and address climate change independent of governments. But they still need government intervention, such as the means by which to capture carbon and then store it, if they are to decarbonise further. And it is this interface between governments, business and people that will play out in COP26. Next slide, please. In April, the government legislated to reduce carbon emissions in the UK by 78% by 2035 and be carbon neutral by 2050. These are in line with targets set by the United States. Last week, it published its net zero strategy, setting out how it intends to meet these ambitious targets. At its core is an ambition for a full decarbonised power sector by 2035, with electrification supported by low-carbon hydrogen, leading to a phase-out of fossil fuels from surface transport, home heating and much of industry, beginning without delay. Whilst it is acknowledged that a large financial bill will come with this, it will in fact generate almost £1 trillion worth of savings, the majority of which will be secured by businesses and households rather than the Treasury. Next slide, please. Finally, I want to leave you with a photo of some beautiful, majestic polar bears. The significance: if we don't do something now and global warming continues to rise, it is creatures like this who, unable to adapt quick enough, will feel it first and will, along with their habitat, disappear altogether. However, together we can help them and ourselves by making the necessary changes needed to halt and eventually reverse CO2 emissions. So we can reduce our reliance on fossil fuels, change our economies to become greener, healthier and more sustainable, and start to reverse global warming. And so I just want to hand you over to Gavin, who will tell you a little bit more about what the LEP itself is doing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mary. So my name is Gavin Fletcher. I work for the Midlands Energy Hub, and I'm based within the Leicester and Leicestershire Enterprise Partnership. What I'm going to do is I'm going to talk through 3 project areas, mostly at the Midlands level, but they support regional and local understanding of the low carbon sector, and also they're starting to help us understand where there might be some opportunities for businesses, again, both at a local and a regional and national level. Before I go into the projects, next slide, please. Just a small bit about the Midlands Energy Hub. So as I said, I'm part of the Midlands Energy Hub. It's made up of officers like myself, based in each of the local enterprise partnerships across the Midlands. We're here to support and develop the push to zero carbon. And in doing that, we work locally with local authorities and LEPs. We work regionally with Midlands Engine and Midlands Connect. And then we also feed that local and regional information into central government through BEIS, who Sam is coming here from. So that's what the Midlands Energy Hub is there to do. Next slide, please. The first project I'm going to talk through is a study that the Midlands Energy Hub commissioned, looking at the low carbon and environmental goods and services sector. And so this is a really important piece of work because we haven't previously had a really good handle on the size, the scale of the low carbon and environmental goods and services sector. The study looked at the sector across the Midlands, but it also broke it down to local authority level. And so we've been able to pick out trends at a Midlands level, but it's also really useful for local enterprise partnerships to understand where where the size of the sector to their local economy, but also where the strengths and weaknesses of the sector are as well. And so as you can see here on the slide, across the Midlands, the sector's worth 26.6 billion. And then the 5 largest subsectors in the low carbon and environmental goods and services sector are wind, building technologies, alternative fuels, photovoltaics, and water and wastewater treatment. The reason this is important for a group like this is that it starts to look at where the trends are for the sector. It starts to pick out where our strengths are so that we can start building on that. And obviously those sector strengths will filter down through the supply chain as well. It also identifies where the weaknesses are. So, there might be areas that we, as a local enterprise partnership, feel we need to look at how we strengthen that through skills and jobs. Next slide, please. And the next project really built on that that sector report. So some of the main areas of strengths that came out through the report were alternative fuels, but also alternative fuel vehicles. And you can see the last bullet point there, which shows that alternative fuel vehicles showed a really strong growth in the Midlands compared to the UK average. And obviously, with the Midlands having such a strong logistics sector, particularly in Leicestershire, we wanted to delve into the detail around logistics a bit more. So we commissioned a piece of work looking at the low carbon transport hubs. Now, this is where we looked at, firstly, a blueprint for a low carbon energy and transport hub. So that would be an infrastructure scale location where we are generating energy. We're also generating alternative fuels, and we're also offering opportunities for refueling of alternative fuel vehicles. So that would be large scale electric charging, but also potentially hydrogen refueling, and maybe other fuels like liquid gas fuels and other things. But also alongside that fueling and generation, looking at complementary activities. So you might also have logistics parks based there, and public transport coming in and out and refueling as well. So that was the blueprint. And if you go on to the next slide, please. We then worked on the blueprint and looked at, if we were mapping a network of these hubs, where would they go across the Midlands? And so the network looked at the more practical aspects of what a hub would need. So obviously it would need a large site, but also it would need things like close proximity to strategic road networks, really good grid infrastructure so that we could bring the electricity in or feed generation into the grid, but also things like having really good transport links and having other activities nearby, so be that retail, leisure attractions or logistics parks. So this piece of work, this hub's work, identified 50 sites across the Midlands, which we shortlisted to a priority 11 sites across the Midlands. And so the next steps from this piece of work are to identify funding to develop business cases. And again, hopefully you can see how this would have a trickle-down effect to wider economic benefits through supply chain and obvious benefits to the logistics sector as well. Go on to the next slide, please. The third project is a new project called H2GV MIDS. This has just started, and it's a partnership project, which the partnership's made up of public sector, so local authorities, local enterprise partnerships, Midlands Engine and Midlands Connect, but then a really strong body of private sector partners as well, from small partners up to large energy companies like EDF Energy. The project's going to look at a hydrogen HGV ecosystem across the Midlands, and it's building a business case for this HGV hydrogen ecosystem. And obviously, again, building on the strengths of logistics in the Midlands, and particularly in Leicestershire, it looks at hydrogen HGV vehicles themselves, hydrogen generation, and hydrogen refueling stations. And it looks at this across the Midlands. So where would we need fueling locations across the Midlands? Where do we co-locate fueling and generation? And how quickly can we drive uptake of hydrogen HGVs across the Midlands? And as I said, there's a large number of partners looking at the business case. So it's not just looking at the cost of the vehicles, it's looking at the cost of the fuel and that supply chain. So really building into the business case all of those aspects of vehicles through to use, and hopefully starting to build that really interesting use case for hydrogen for HGVs. So that's a snapshot of 3 projects across the Midlands. And if you go on to the last slide, which I think is just a quick sort of thank you, but you know, obviously the aim of all of these areas of work is to really develop an understanding of the gaps and the opportunities that zero carbon is bringing up for businesses across the Midlands. And we're really looking at how we can feed all of this information into local plans so that we can identify how the work will support local jobs and obviously support local businesses across the area. So thanks very much for your time. And I'm passing on to Sam Lux next.
Thanks so much, Gavin. Hi everyone, I'm Sam from the Department of Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, and I'm going to sort of zoom out and go back to the global after that fantastic sort of more granular presentation about what's going on in Leicester specifically. So I'm going to be talking about the Together for Our Planet Business Climate Leaders campaign. Next slide, please. Which has been leading up to COP26. So I won't spend too long on this slide because we've already had a fantastic in-depth overview of what COP is and what it's trying to do. But I will say that it's the largest summit we've ever hosted in the UK, with over 30,000 delegates expected. So it's really, really exciting, such a sort of one-off opportunity. Next slide, please. And right at the centre of COP26 this year is going to be the Race to Zero, which is the United Nations campaign aligning. It's sort of the biggest alliance of organisations all over the world committed to net zero emissions by 2050. And because we do have the privilege of hosting COP26 this year, we have our own kind of UK skin of that Race to Zero. So it's a domestic campaign called Together for Our Planet, and that has a public engagement side, but also a business engagement side. And all of that business stuff is spearheaded by Andrew Griffith MP, who is our net zero business champion. So he has a FTSE 100 campaign on the big business side, trying to get as many big businesses to make that commitment to net zero as possible, and that's going incredibly well. So look out for an announcement, I should say, next week. But what we're talking about today is kind of the small business counterpart. So me and a small team are working on this national campaign to try and get as many UK small businesses to sign up to Race to Zero as possible via the Sme Climate Commitment, which I'm going to go into a bit more detail about today in the short 10 minutes that I have. Next slide, please. So the reasons we're focusing on SMEs is because actually they make up a huge chunk of our emissions, and also the vast majority of our business community. I know I heard earlier that the same is definitely true in this local area. So ultimately, without supporting small businesses, we have no hope of reaching our national net zero 2050 target. And so this campaign is all about starting to provide that in-depth support. Next slide, please. And this is how we're doing at the moment. We have officially 2,074 small businesses in the UK signed up to the Race to Zero. And you can see when we look at this international picture, we're doing incredibly well with the next best, the US on 71. So we will be going into COP as a global leader in small business climate engagement. However, of course, we have much higher ambitions given that there's nearly 6 million small businesses in the UK. So this is really just a start. It's a good start, but we have a long way to go. And so sort of a spoiler alert, but what I'm asking you to do today, hopefully, is to make that climate commitment and join this global community, and then tell everyone that you know about it as well, so we can really start creating this snowball effect. Next slide, please. And this is what the regional breakdown looks like. So this graph actually takes into account how many businesses there are in each area in the first instance. So if we looked at signups alone, for example, London would be well ahead. I think they have about 25%, but actually when we factor in the number of businesses, Scotland is leading the way, interestingly. So East Midlands is on about 7%, which isn't bad at all. Really, I think if we divided this equally, each region should be about 8%, and that's what we're really striving for. We want to make sure that we are just kind of reaching every area with our support, and making sure that every business community feels a part of this campaign. So if you would like to help us improve, like give East Midlands a boost, then another reason to get involved. Next slide, please. These are the different strands of the campaign. So at the national level, we have our usual government channels, of course, but we also have a task force of big corporations. I won't ask, they're listed on the next slide, but we'll just skip past that in a second. So that's Google, Unilever, BT, NatWest, some really big players in there, and they're all committed to helping us reach the small business community in various ways. So that's been a really exciting element of the campaign, and sort of an unusual public-private partnership going on there. Then the next level down, we have a series of regional events that we've hosted called Your Business Journey to Net Zero. So we've had six of those across the year, and we started with the Midlands. Actually, they were all virtual in the end, and then we finished with Scotland a couple of weeks ago. I think all the content for that is still online, so you might be able to go and have a look. And then the next level down, we have place-based engagement. So we're working closely with both hubs. We've actually developed a Train the Trainer pack to support business advisors and other kind of third-party organisations to engage businesses with net zero and the Race to Zero, specifically kind of via this campaign structure and this commitment. Again, I'll talk more about that in a second. And then finally, we also have a sector specialisation element to the campaign. So we work closely with trade associations. We have a working group that meets monthly and kind of acts as a sounding board as the campaign develops. So that's just making sure that the content that we're creating is actually useful to all kinds of industries, bearing in mind how diverse small businesses are in terms of the challenges that they face. Next slide, please. So these are the campaign support, as I mentioned. Next slide. So just a note about our launch back in May, the PM invited around 10 businesses down to Downing Street. So that was really high profile and exciting. And the BT put it on the BT Tower. And we had a big concerted comms push, and then every month since we've had kind of a big news sort of or feature or something happening where we've got all of our stakeholders to help us with that push. So if you'd like to be on the list to help with future kind of comms pushes, then please do let me know. Next slide, please. So this is kind of getting into the nitty gritty now, like why would you actually want to do this? Why would you make the Sme Climate Commitment? So our research shows that most businesses do know and care about climate, and actually being a part of the solution to the climate crisis is a big motivator, which is very encouraging. But of course, there's also lots of benefits. So the idea of growing your business, so reaching new customers who are increasingly looking for sustainable products and services. And once you sign up, you get access to a communications toolkit, so you can display assets on your websites to show that you're actually taking climate seriously. And kind of part of a UN-backed campaign as well. So it's sort of kind of the global umbrella, if you like, umbrella campaign, and that's on top of financial benefits that you might see from resource efficiency. And on the other side of things, of course, regulations are going to increasingly favour those businesses who are starting to reduce their emissions. So it makes sense to be ahead of the curve and kind of future-proof your business if you can. Next slide, please. This is just to say a lot of businesses are already doing lots of fantastic work, so kind of why not gain recognition, again kind of getting that UN stamp of approval. I've mentioned the pack of assets that we have, but just also to say that you can absolutely be a part of other initiatives. There are so many out there, we know, other pledges, kind of local targets as well. Why not, you know, sign up to both and get all of the kind of help and support from both. We think that's great. We know it can be quite a kind of a confusing landscape, but again, just to emphasize that we see this as kind of the global community of businesses working together. So we think it's a really positive step to take. And then just to say that when you sign up, you can choose 2030, 2040 or 2050. To be in line with any other initiatives or kind of local targets that you might be affiliated with. Next slide, please. So Race Zero, I mentioned, it's for all kinds of organisations, and each one has their own specific route in, if you like. For small businesses, the main route is the Sme Climate Commitment, which is what we're talking about today. Next slide, please. And this is what it actually looks like. So halving emissions by 2030, net zero by 2050, and then a yearly progress report. And on the right, you can see the very, very simple and short sign-up form. It will probably take less than 5 minutes to do. And then next slide, please. I just want to emphasize that there's a lot of support on the other side. It's not like you'll be left alone once you've done this. But if you are interested, then we recommend going to the businessclimatehub.org.uk. We've built this as a UK specific landing page on the wider Sme Climate Hub, who hosts the Sme Climate Commitment. So that's kind of an international coalition, if you like. And so on this Business Climate Hub, besides making the commitment, that international commitment which we're linking back to frequently, we do have lots of UK specific resources, case studies, practical advice. Again, I'll go through this in a second. So really would love your feedback if you're kind of a business who's looking to actually use this in practice. Next slide, please. And again, so just to say that what happens afterwards, you'll have access to a load of resources that are very high quality, and again, they have kind of UN backing. So we know there's so much out there, and it can be a confusing time and place. So we think it's important to make sure that everything's kind of together for you in this kind of one-stop shop. That's the idea of the Sme Climate Hub. And then we also, from BEIS, as the UK government department, send out a monthly newsletter with all of the latest regulations and incentives, competitions, consultations, all the kind of news and opportunities together in one place for you. But also just so you can opt out if you hate newsletters, that's fine too. And there's always the chance to feature in our national PR campaigns. We think it's a much more powerful story if it's coming from businesses who have actually done this in real life and have seen the benefits, as opposed to just us in government telling you what to do. And then, of course, the next step is really for you to start taking those beneficial measures to reduce your emissions, and then submitting that annual progress report. We get a lot of questions about that as well. Next slide, please. So this is something that the Sme Climate Hub are working on very closely at the moment, and they're about to release a standard reporting framework, and that should strike the right balance when it comes to kind of your data inputting between something that's rigorous enough to be taken seriously by banks and investors who might want to kind of finance you for these kind of sustainable actions, but then also not too much that it's stressful or overwhelming. Next slide, please. So once you make the commitment, this is the dashboard that you'll have access to. It's not actually gone live yet, it's about to. So this is kind of a schematic as opposed to kind of what it actually looks like, but this is from the Sme Climate Hub, our international partner. So just to give you a sense of what you'll actually be able to have access to. So you'll be building up your own business profile. You'll have a suite of educational courses that you can take on different aspects of the net zero journey, tailored reporting, which I mentioned in the previous slide, and then a carbon calculator tool that feeds into that and gives you tailored recommendations based on your specific emissions profile. Next slide, please. So what government support is available at the national level is mainly focused around transport at the moment, and of course there's so much at the local level in pockets. So recommend talking to your growth hub, and I know obviously you're in the right place if you're on this call, but also just to mention that we see this as a really exciting opportunity to grow a database of businesses who we can then not only inform about what's going on in terms of the latest policies, but also listen and ask questions about what you actually need to take these steps, so that we can use that to kind of shape our thinking going forwards. Next slide, please. So this, I mentioned, there's also practical advice on the UK Business Climate Hub. We started off with a menu of options ranging from quite small investments like switching LED bulbs, you might be able to kind of get grants for these, right through to more larger scale investments or measures like installing renewables on site. So each one of these is a drop-down box. When you click on it, it will tell you a bit more about the how and the why, and often data on the payback period. But we got feedback suggesting this is useful to some extent, but businesses were looking for more sector-specific advice. Next slide, please. So what we did is work with trade associations and other industry leads to curate kind of the headline actions for each of these pilot industries. So we've started with agriculture, manufacturing, retail, tech, construction and hospitality. And each of them, as I say, kind of picks out the top tips for businesses in those areas to start reducing. However, this is kind of work in progress. We're looking for feedback on it. We have had really good feedback so far, but we definitely want to grow it, add more sectors. So it'd be great if you could have a look through and let us know if you think there's any gaping holes or anything that we could develop. And we really do want to keep this up to date, as well as it's a very fast moving area. And next slide, please. And just to say, there's also an international tools library as well. This started off, we got feedback suggesting it was too overwhelming, it was just too much to trawl through. So what we did is, next slide please, is work with the Oxford University team behind it to create this highlight section you can see on the top left. So it breaks down the net zero journey into stages, and again you can click and it will show you the top 2 or 3 tools for each of those areas. So that kind of is the basics done for you if you don't have the time or energy to go through that much bigger collection of tools. And then since then the Oxford team have actually put together this sort of filter function that you can see on the bottom right, and that will hopefully help you to isolate the kind of resource that you're looking for more quickly. You can do that now, you don't have to sign up to be able to access those tools, and so again recommend having a play around if you are starting to think about reducing emissions. Next, I think final slide please. So just ways to get involved, no surprises. Number 1 is signing up, so making the Sme Climate Commitment. I can put a link in the chat, or I can ask the organisers to send you a link afterwards, and encourage others to do the same. Promoting the campaign on your social media channels, via newsletters, if you're part of kind of wider networks, and also if there's any events that you're attending and you'd like to come and speak, or if you have if you'd like to use these slides that I have today, you'd be very, very welcome. And lastly, helping us to find those really inspiring stories. So if you or another business that you know has taken some exciting measures that you think could help other businesses with their journeys, then yeah, please let us know. Thank you so much. I will now hand over to Fiona.
Hello everyone, I'm Fiona Mann, Climate Change Manager at Leicester City Council, and I'm going to talk to you about what the Council's been doing for COP26. Next slide please. So I won't go through the goals of COP26 in detail because other speakers have already done that. I did want to just mention though that really one of the focuses of the Paris Agreement that will be reviewed in Glasgow at COP26 is to achieve global net zero by 2050, which is the UK's target. And it's just worth mentioning that at the local level, Leicester City Council's ambition is to reach net zero by 2030. So, you know, lots of ambition locally. And yes, the other goals are there. So adapting to climate change is really important. It's not just about mitigation. Mobilising finance is something that the conference will be looking at in detail. And it's really about collaboration at all levels. So on to the next slide, please. So the objectives really for the City Council's COP26 campaign, we wanted something that was very much social media led and a public facing communications campaign to raise awareness of the climate emergency and COP26, and really with a focus around climate action locally. So we wanted something simple and cohesive because we already work in partnership with lots of organisations, from schools to businesses and faith and community groups. So we wanted as many different organisations and individuals to take part as possible. So it really is simple. It's based on a climate pledge campaign where we're asking organisations and businesses and individuals to commit to one simple pledge for the climate, to write this on a green paper heart and to photograph that, put it on social media. And we're also encouraging as many people as possible to send their green hearts back to us at the council so that we can send them to the Director of Communications at COP26 during COP fortnight. And I'll give you a bit more information about how you can get involved in my talk. So next slide, please. So yes, the main focus of the campaign is the Green Hearts from Leicester campaign. We launched that as part of Great Big Green Week, which was in mid-September. And the Green Hearts campaign is running up until the start of COP. And we're asking people, if they can, to take part and send their Green Hearts to us by the 1st of November so that we can send them to COP sort of in the middle of the fortnight, and hopefully they'll then get picked up by their social media activities. But it's something that people can continue to engage in during COP and afterwards as well. Next slide, please. And we've produced some large boards, photo boards that businesses can borrow during COP fortnight, or any time leading up to there. And these are great if you want to, as a team, put something on social media about some actions that your business is prepared to pledge as part of this campaign. So these are quite large boards with a cutout for people to put their face through. Next slide, please. We've also had some large heart-shaped boards that we can lend out to people as well, that you can write on and then wipe off. Next slide, please. And we're hoping, we're doing various things really around the main campaign. So we've done briefings for council staff, trying to get as many council staff as possible engaging in this. And we're hoping to have lots of green hearts sent back to us, as I say, by the 1st of November, so that we can put them up in a display in Town Hall Square in Leicester on the 6th of November, which is International Day of Action at COP26. And then the idea is to send those in a very large envelope, hopefully, to the Director of Comms at COP26. Next slide, please. So yes, we've produced an information pack, and that includes lots of business pledge ideas. So they can be really simple things like providing showers at your place of work so that staff are more likely to cycle into work. It can be purchasing electric fleet vehicles, obviously that's a bigger action. Rolling out carbon literacy training to your staff. There's lots of ideas included in the information pack, and there's also a template for the heart, so you can print out and write on your pledges and get as many of your staff taking part as possible. So I just want to say thank you. I'm going to talk now about Green Bell, which actually is a way of funding some of those actions that you might want to take around retrofitting energy efficiency measures in your businesses. Now, this is something that I don't work on directly, but I'm presenting this today on behalf of our energy projects team. Next slide, please. So Greenbell is a European Regional Development Fund grant for SMEs in Leicester and Leicestershire, and it's to fund energy efficiency improvements to business premises. And it's administered by, as I said before, the energy projects team at Leicester City Council. It's been running since 2016 and we're partway through the second phase. Next slide, please. So it provides grants of between £1,000 and £10,000. Half of that would need to be match funded by the business, and it will fund a whole range of energy efficiency measures, which I'll outline in a moment. And yeah, it applies across the city and the county. Next slide, please. So it's all about supporting the transition to the low carbon economy, and it's about saving emissions each year. So there are targets to support almost 300 businesses in total over the life of the scheme, and we're hoping to save over 2,000 tonnes of carbon annually. Next slide, please. So these are the measures that are supported. So it's a really comprehensive scheme. It can fund anything from solar PVs to heat pumps and new boilers, energy efficient boilers. Next slide, please. So there's a couple of case studies, but I'm going to just mention the second one. So if you could just move to the next slide, please. Because this one is really quite impressive. So this was Case Pack Limited that we worked with, and through the scheme, LED lighting was introduced into 196 high bays to replace fluorescent lighting. They received a total grant of £10,000 for the work, and through this work, the company will be saving over 100 tonnes of carbon annually and about £42,000 as well off their power bills, energy bills. Next slide, please. And this is another case study, which I won't go through in detail because I know we're tight on time, but this was where some old gas boilers were replaced. So during phase one, we helped 92 SMEs, over £500,000 of grant was awarded, and around 850 tonnes of carbon saved annually. Next slide, please. And through phase two, about halfway through phase two, we're hoping to help a further 200 SMEs. There's about £1.1 million of funding available, and we're looking to save around 1,400 tonnes of carbon annually through phase two. Next slide, please, which I think might be the final one. Yeah, so if you are interested in finding out more about the scheme, do contact either Rob or Anna. They are the project officers, and they can give you lots of advice. They can carry out site assessments. I think they're still carrying those out virtually at the moment. Yeah, do make use of it if you can. Thank you very much. I'm going to hand over now to Richard from Zellar.
That's great. Thanks ever so much, Fiona. Some really interesting stuff there, and must connect with you on some of that. So thanks everyone for coming today, and also thank you for inviting me to take part in this webinar. Zellar, guys, we'd love to tell you a little bit more about Zellar here. Zellar is helping to simplify and support businesses on their sustainability journey. We've been created to provide businesses with a platform that will accelerate their sustainability journey in the simplest, most cost-effective way and efficiently. Many businesses don't have the time, money or knowledge on this subject, so we aim to provide them with the resource that they require on their journey to net zero, most importantly, all in one place. We have got a little video link here, Shreek, that I'm hoping you'll be able to play. That goes into quite a bit of detail of what we're about, so hopefully that will work, and you can sit back and enjoy.
Making your business sustainable can seem complicated, costly, and time-consuming. Where do you even get started? We created Zella to help, providing everything you need to become a greener, sustainable business on one easy-to-use platform. Zella gives your business access to all the data, insights, tools, and support you need to become more sustainable. It's customized to your sector and provides behavioural changes personalised for your business, connects you to renewable suppliers, and puts you in touch with local offsetting and volunteering projects. So what are you waiting for? All you need to do is sign up to Zella to create and personalise your business profile. For just one simple annual payment that's as little as £5 per week with no hidden costs. Then enter your energy provider and business information so we can calculate your carbon emissions. Our platform allows you to benchmark your sustainability against other businesses in your sector and community, and get a personalised plan with actionable insights to become more sustainable. We make it easy to transition to green energy. And put you in touch with local carbon offsetting projects and volunteering projects to help you reach your sustainability goal. Add the projects you're supporting to your business profile and promote your sustainability journey to your customers by sharing highlights to your social media via your dashboard. Then shout about Zella and our sustainability app to other businesses, so we can all create a greener planet together. Zella, sustainability made simple. Contact us now.
Thank you, guys. Hopefully you all heard that. Shreek, if we could just have the next screen, please. Lovely, thank you. I just wanted to focus a couple on that. I hope the video gave you a good oversight, but it was just a few areas that I wanted to cover off that you might have seen in that video. First of all, a customized roadmap. This is really important because we fully understand that businesses need to go on their own different journey. For example, if you're a manufacturer or you're a hairdresser or a coffee shop, we need to understand that that journey to net zero and that sustainability journey is very different across those sectors. So it's all about understanding and understanding your behaviours and realising what sector you're in and the journey you need to go on. Having everything in one place is really important. There's lots of messaging around sustainability at the moment, getting advice from all different areas, but what we're trying to create with Zella is actually to have all that information in one place, which you can refer to constantly, and all the data that goes around it. We're creating something that we feel is very affordable. We're a subscription service. Subscriptions start from £125 per year for a micro business, going up to £250 for a small business, and then £400 for larger businesses. So a lot of businesses at the moment don't have the resource and investment to employ consultants, etc., and invest thousands of pounds in that. So we're really trying to create something that is really affordable. How it works, guys, hopefully you saw that on the video, and an important part now is actually sharing the story of your sustainability journey as well, and that's why all of these actions that you are taking will be put on your Zella profile and linked directly through to your social media channels. Next slide, please. Again, this just really sort of outlines the key parts of the platform. Again, I'm not going to cover all this now because we have done already. You might have noticed the benchmarking in the video. We feel it's really important to give businesses an insight to where they benchmark. So once they create their profile on the Zella platform, we get some details on their primary emissions and they answer a number of questions about their business. We'll be able to tell them where they benchmark in their sector compared to their competitors. Now, this is something that you won't necessarily have to showcase on your Zella profile, but it's good to know where you are as a starting point. Once we've understood your behaviours, it's important then to go about reducing them and taking the relevant action to do so, whether that be transitioning to renewable energy, investing in green tech, And once you've done as much as possible around those behaviours to drive down your emissions, it's then connecting you directly to offsetting projects, not only international ones, but ones in your region. We're speaking to landowners, farmers in Leicestershire itself around connecting businesses in Leicestershire to local offsetting projects. Thank you. And next slide. Is there one just before that? Well, no, that's fine. Sorry, I think there's one slide here. No, that's cool, guys. If you just pop us to the next one, I've got. It's probably best that I show this to you. I'll put some links into the platform of our website at the end of this chat, just so you can see what the profiles look like. The real important aspects here, just to see why this is really important to business. We're trying to make sustainability simple. We're accelerating your sustainability goals. We're also saving lots of money. We fully appreciate that businesses at the moment are finding it hard financially. So it's very much giving you as much detail as possible about potential green investments you can make in your business and how you can actually equate and measure the return on investment, the emissions that are going to be reduced, and putting that in a really clear and concise report for you so you can decide what actions to take specifically. Making you competitive is really important. We personally believe, and you'll see it in certain sectors now, some are a bit slow behind, but your customers, your clients, and even your employees will demand that you are showcasing your sustainability credentials. I think there was a question earlier on in the panel about that. Well, we have to demonstrate your sustainability credentials. That's an absolute given for us. You should be doing it anyway to your customers, employees and clients, but it's only a matter of time before the government will come to you one day and say, look guys, what are you doing? There's lots of people putting some nice sustainability criteria on their websites, but we can actually give the direct data that goes around the action that has been taken, and you can direct people directly to your Zella profile, and it will tell all those stories. We'll enhance your reputation as well. The Zella platform will actually be a directory, so people can actually search for your business on the Zella directory and be able to see all the great things you're doing. The benchmarking, just to remind you that some of those aspects on the platform you don't have to make public. You can keep those private if you're not performing well. This is all about creating some great stories and great actions and putting a very positive case together for why businesses and what they're doing. And then finally, the last slide, just rushing through this a bit, conscious of time. Thanks again, guys. There's a couple of things that I would like to tell you about. Some of you may have seen that we actually are working with the Leicester and Leicester Enterprise Partnership with a fantastic scheme. It's brilliant that Leicestershire has been the first region and first LEP that have actually recognised the potential of success of this. They've invested in 80 licenses that have been distributed to businesses across the region. We've actually provided 20 as well, so there's 100 businesses going on our journey over the next 12 months. We have got about just short of 80 businesses signed up now, so there are a few places left. We do have a really exciting launch event. It's a bit short notice. It's on Tuesday at the National Space Centre. We've got some great people speaking, some sustainability experts, as well as some of the businesses that are actually taking part in the scheme, so you can hear about them, the exact actions and journey that they're going on. So if you'd like to come along, there's a few spaces left. I can put a bit more information, or please reach out to any of the guys at the LEP, and they will provide you with the details. I will now pass back over to Ian. I know there's a few questions that have come up, and he's going to go through those. So back to you, Ian.
Brilliant, thank you very much. It's great to see some questions come through. It's great to hear of all the various initiatives that folk are doing. Just from a finance perspective, so where we can sort of say, we've got Mattioli Woods, massive big office in the city centre, and we've got about 28, 29 offices around the country. So from our perspective, this falls into something called ESG, which is environmental, social and governance. So we have to look at end-to-end supply chains, and it's difficult to sort of sometimes try and comprehend what can we do as a business to really make a difference, and some of the questions that have come through sort of touch on that. So for example, we're looking at reducing all our paper and making all our client interactions completely digital. We had 120 consultants that were traveling all over the country seeing people. So what COVID has done, although it's been a sort of a global pandemic that is obliterated and affected so many different people in different ways, it has changed the way that we work as an organisation. It's brought in digital interactions like this webinar. Rather than having people travelling, we're able to touch base with people quite easily. So there is ways that we can all make a difference. As a responsible finance firm, we're changing the way that we do investment, for example. So we are creating portfolios for people to invest in more green and more ethical investments. We're also looking at our suppliers, so making sure that, you know, from a supplier relationship, the people that we work with have got suitable ESG policies and practices, you know, when we're onboarding them, and making sure that we can work collaboratively with our suppliers to minimise our mutual impact on the environment, so that we can reach a common set of goals. And so that's kind of, you know, just trying to think about it differently from our perspective. Could I just ask the speakers to pop back on, because there are some questions that have come through for some various folks. It's probably better if we can see people's faces and look in the whites of their eyes about how they make a difference and make a change. The first one that sort of came through was when Mary Louise was speaking. So within business supply chains, do you think that we businesses will be required to demonstrate that what we are doing to reduce our carbon footprint if we are to gain contacts in the future? So that's probably one for Mary Louise or anyone else that wants to pop in on that one.
Well, if I kick off, Ian, I mean, it's difficult to say at this stage, because I don't know what those contracts could look like. But I would recommend to any business that is looking to secure government contracts around this area, is that the greener they are, the better chance they have of securing that funding, because when they complete those application forms, it's going to shine out that they are a company that really wants to make a difference, and they know what they're talking about, and so the government would probably have more confidence in them. But I don't know whether Sam wants to add to that, or Gavin.
Gavin popped his hand up, so did you want to add into that, Gavin?
Yeah, I think what we're seeing is a lot of big businesses, as they're making their climate commitments, that's then trickling down through their supply chains. And so I'm sure there will be some policy angles that will start to enforce this. But you know, in terms of the business-to-business interactions, you're certainly starting to see that already. Some of the more forward-thinking businesses like M&S have been doing it for years. Ian, you just talked about Mattioli Woods, and I'm sure that starts to trickle down through your supply chains as well. So I think that's where we're going to see the immediate movement, and then hopefully government interactions will follow on as well. I know a lot of councils, as they look at their climate emergency declarations, are looking at their supply chains as well.
Brilliant. Just while we've got Gavin, you there, a question came in while you were chatting, which was saying, this is all new for my business. I don't have an established set of connections. How do I engage with these new initiatives? And again, if anyone else wants to bob in, just pop your hand up and I'll bring you in.
Yeah, I suppose a lot of it is really early stage when we're talking about things like hydrogen. I think it would be a case of letting either myself or Mary Louise know if businesses are interested in taking part in some of these early start areas of work, and we can link businesses in. Otherwise, it'll be a case of linking with initiatives like Zeller, linking into your growth hub, and paying attention to what the LEP's doing, because the LEP is really getting a grip on the whole of the low carbon agenda, and so we'll be starting to filter that through to businesses locally.
Brilliant. Just while we're on Zeller, you mentioned that while Richard was chatting through, there's a question was, how do small businesses introduce green into their business plans, and is this something that Zeller can really help with?
Yeah, thanks, Ian. I think the most important thing, and I think this is what small businesses really struggle with at the moment, is actually understanding what their emissions are at the moment. It's actually the most important thing is actually identifying what their emissions are and understanding what that is before they can take the action, because it's all very well sort of say, oh, we need to invest in that, we need to invest in that, but they need to understand where their emissions are being produced, how they're being produced, you know, what equipment or what sources is that coming from first. And then it's all about understanding that and then taking action in their own pace and time as well, because they've got lots of other things going on. So, you know, we believe everyone can get to net zero in 2030 using the Zeller platform. But also we appreciate that this is something that businesses might only be able to spend 15 minutes a month on doing, but hopefully with our platform, it's all there in one place and they can do that. And also we're really encouraging businesses to actually appoint a sustainability champion within their business as well, who can take a lead on this. You know, something that not only that they can use the platform, but be that person that goes around the business encouraging positive action, even if it's recycling in the kitchen or introducing disposable straws, etc.
That's a really good segue for Sam, because the one that came in while Sam was chatting was what type of people, from a skills, levels, attitudes, do you think are key for sustainable innovation to be prioritised within businesses that you've seen or you've touched on within the areas that you've touched base with?
I think I might need to clarify the question. Do you mean what kinds of businesses, or?
I think this is based on the people skills. So what type of people from a skills perspective, you know, that you've touched on when you were chatting, that you've seen or come into contact with?
I suppose it's every type of person. You know, it runs through from manufacturing right through to comms and marketing, like telling the story right. Yeah, and I think everyone has a part to play in this, no matter what your kind of business. I think some really good points made about the supply chains. Gavin mentioned big businesses, it's not just it's optional anymore. They have to calculate their scope 3 emissions, and so every single supplier has to comply in order for them to meet their own targets, and that is across the board, all sectors.
Excellent. And just quickly, I'm very consciously aware of time. The question that came in, Sam, again, while you're on just now, is do we know how we're performing as a region and how we compare to other regions in the UK in terms of CO2 emissions? And if others are doing better, is there anything that we can learn and adopt? Again, that's one if anyone else wants to jump in there.
I can only talk from a kind of small business perspective, and I showed you the graph earlier, so East Midlands are on around 7%. I can also go back to the data and isolate Leicester and Leicestershire postcodes if that's helpful, and follow up with that. But I don't know if anyone has like the actual emissions data for Leicestershire.
Yeah, just add to that a little bit, Sam. I mean, one of the reasons the LEP have engaged with Zella is that we will actually produce what we're going to call a panorama report to them every quarter, whereby those 100 businesses that are on the journey, we can actually feed back specific data around what they're doing. And it's not just, you know, that maybe that they've invested in this piece of tech or they've done that, but it's actually, we can actually show them the specific emissions that they have reduced by doing those actions. And then it's all about comparing that, what Leicester are doing, to other regions. So we're working with Greater Birmingham and Solihull LEP as well, and some of the others are engaging, and also there's obviously businesses that come onto the platform at their own accord. But we can understand and learn, you know, it might be that, you know, why are accountants in Leicestershire getting on the platform when they're not in Nottingham, or they are in Birmingham, or you know, it's all that understanding that will hopefully enable everyone to get on this journey.
Good. And just before I bring Neil in, one for Fiona and Gavin. Great to see the Green Bell initiative, but given the logistical challenges, grid requirements, etc., and locations, is there a suitable infrastructure nationally to support the plan moving forward? Are other people trying to move at a similar sort of pace?
Gavin, do you want to start with that, as I don't work directly with Green Bell?
Yeah, I don't work directly with Green Bell either, but in terms of the infrastructure, it's, yeah, the national grid, well, in our area, you know, Western Power distribution, the grid does struggle in certain areas. It's an ongoing discussion with partners like Western Power. So as projects come on and start to be developed, we then need the infrastructure to catch up. But you know, everybody's well aware of the need for a much greater electricity capacity in order to accept all of the electric vehicles and the heat pumps that will be coming. Yeah. So all of that work is ongoing, and we liaise with BEIS and WPD in order to help that along.
Excellent.
Yeah, I mean, the council as well are very aware of those issues in terms of trying to deliver our climate emergency strategy. Yeah, we're lobbying government and the Western Power as well to improve capacity, because it is a major issue.
Excellent. Mary Louise, you popped your hand up.
Yeah, I would just like to add to that, with another hat that I have at the LEP, it was to manage the LEP's £125 million European Structural Investment Funds programme, and that's the programme that's funded projects like Green Bell. And what we've done is, over the lifetime of the programme, which is 6 years, we've invested around 8 million in infrastructure projects, particularly around transport, to really alleviate those hotspots, particularly around the train station, also putting in, helping to put in cycle paths and what have you. So it's really about a step change for individuals as well as businesses to look at their journey times, etc. So there's those little things that can do, but they actually all add up to be quite big things. And so whilst the East Midlands has one of the highest transport CO2 emissions, actually we're actually moving quicker than other regions in terms of lowering that, and that's by introducing those step changes as well as the infrastructure around that. And we will continue to do that, such as with the investment that the LEP's made around the St Margaret's bus station, which will become net zero, but also we're putting in the infrastructure around that to make it easier for pedestrians and for cyclists. So it's those little things that we're doing.
Excellent. I'm really consciously aware of time, and we have run over, so I'll just hand over to Neil now to summarise and pull us all back in line.
No, I find it fascinating. Thank you. Actually, in terms of just the 3 things in terms of what we can do, etc. The most important thing we can do, all of us, is use less, use less, use less. And all the initiatives that are coming through from Zella and Bays and Mary-Louise and Gavin, etc., should be about using less, using less, using less. Saves you money for a start, but then we get cleverer and try and do things more effectively. So that's the first thing. Also, someone mentioned champions in the business. It's very easy for us to then pass, as business people, pass the issue. Okay, you can be our green person. Yeah, but I do believe that it's only when it's actually deeply within our culture to bother to go back into the office, to turn my computer off because I forgot to do it. It's only when we actually feel that's the right way of behaving that we will start to make it. We'll not start, we already started. Well, it makes significant differences. I just want to say that. Also, my business did pick up Green Bell, and it saved us a lot of money as we changed all our lights to LED. So I would recommend going to Green Bell. It's it's good. The last bits I've got to do, apart from coughing, obviously, is to thank everyone for what they've said, and Ian for chairing. I think it's been fascinating. It is recorded. It will be on a website, so do look again, because there was a huge amounts of information flung out at 10-minute intervals. So do check that out. In terms of what LBV are doing, we have the members' dinner, and if there are members here that haven't yet taken a table, the members' dinner is at the Belmont Hotel. It's free for members, and it's on the 18th of November, so shuffle about there. I'm not sure how many spaces there are left, but certainly our members' dinner, it's free to members, and in fact guests at a reduced price as well, 18th of November. And we're also doing a Christmas social at the Rutland and Derby in Leicester, it's on Friday. And that's between 5 o'clock and 8 o'clock on Wednesday, the 8th of December. So Christmas social, Wednesday, the 8th of December at the Rutland and Derby. And we're going to be meeting in person in future as well. So this is where proper networking and everything else can start to take effect. So those are my 3 things. Ian, if there's anything else you need to say.
Just to say thank you all very much for attending. As Neil did say, the recording of this is going to be made available and sent out later on today, and to thank all the speakers for their very valuable input today. So thank you all very much. Have a good day, and we will possibly see people in person in the not too distant future. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.